Hi everyone, my name is Kayvan, and in this course I am going to demonstrate how to create an application in ASP.NET which uses pushSharp component to send Apple remote notifications to your registered iOS devices. So what is APNS? APNS, or Apple Push Notification Service, commonly referred to as Apple Notification Service or APNS, is a platform service created by Apple that enables third-party application developers to send notification data to applications installed on Apple devices. The notification information sent can include badges, sounds, or custom text alerts. I'm sure all of you who have got an Apple device have installed applications that on the first launch request for your permission to enable Apple notifications, and if you choose to receive, you will get notifications on your mobile devices. So, what are the prerequisites for this course? First, you need a valid P12 certificate file created in your Mac OS X. What is a .p12 file? It's a binary format for storing the server certificate and the private key into a single encryptable file, and it's called a .p12 certificate file. And if you don't know how to create this certificate file, don't worry. There is a good article on rayvenderlik.com website, and it's called Push Notifications Tutorial Getting Started. You can search Google to find this article. And then you need a database of valid device tokens to send APNS or Apple notification services. And then I assume you have good knowledge in ASP.NET and you've got Visual Studio 2015 installed on your Windows or your Mac. Okay, let's start Visual Studio and create the project. Okay, I can choose new project from here or use file, new project, and choose Visual Basic and Web, and I use the latest .NET framework, which is 4.6.1. Let's name the project Remote Notification and press OK. And then we should choose a template. I choose an empty template, and make sure all of these checkboxes, web form, MVC, web API, host in the cloud, are unchecked, and press OK. It's creating the project for us. It may take a while. Okay, we now have got our project. Now let's Google and see what is pushSharp component. I open my browser and type in Google pushSharp. Here's the website. I click on it. And you see here it says it's a server-side library for sending push notifications to iOS, Android, and other devices. And you can see the code. Here is a sample code. Now let's go back to Visual Studio. Now let's install this component to the Visual Studio project. We use Tools, NuGet Package Manager, and then choose Manage NuGet Packages for Solution. Now choose the Browse tab and type pushSharp. It's searching for the component, and as you can see, here it is. It's pushSharp by redth. To install this component to your project, you should check it here. Check your project name, and as you can see, the latest stable version is 4.0.10. We hit install, and it starts installing the packet review changes. Yes, we click OK. It's installing newtonsoft.json first, and then as you can see, installing pushSharp, and successfully installed pushSharp to remote notification. And in the references, if I choose here references and close this window, you can see we've got our DLLs here: pushSharp.amazon, pushSharp.apple, pushSharp.core, and we have installed the package into our project. And now that we have our package, we just need a web page to send the message to our device. We right click on the project, choose add web form, and we call it default. Since we don't have any other pages, we call it default. Hit OK, and as you can see, we've got our form here. And don't forget to choose show all files here in your solution explorer. Now we have our code behind file and the default page. Now I need to do another thing, and I need to create an app underline data folder. Right click on the project, add ASP.NET folder, and choose app underline data. Now we've got our app data folder. We need to put our .p12 certificate file in it. We go to our desktop or any location that we have our file. I've got it here right on my desktop. Choose my .p12 file, copy, come back to our project and paste it here. Okay. Now let me open my SQL Management Studio and take a look at the database. Here is my SQL Management Studio, and you can see on your left hand side in the Object Explorer, I've got a test database. If I browse it, I've got a table named APNS devices, and if I edit, you can see I've got my table. It has got 5 columns: ID, device token, device info, status, and data stamp. The ID is a unique identifier for each row in our table, and this is important. This is the device token that we talked about. It's a unique string for each registered Apple device. As you can see, I have added a test device token to the table. It's a unique long string. Now, in order to work with the database in our project, we need to add the connection string to our web.config file. Let's go back to the project, open web.config file, and right after configuration section, I choose connection strings. You see it's there, and now we add our connection. Add name equals, I use the con word, and connection string equals server equals my server name, and we can use SQL Express. Your server might be different. Then we choose our database, which in this case it's called test, and then integrated security equals true, and then provider name system.data.sql client. Okay, so before getting to write some code, let's see what we should do in the code behind file. First, we should read the certificate file and start the APNS service broker. Then we should loop through all the records in the database and send the APNS messages. Now I open the code behind file. Here is default.aspx.vb, and before doing anything, we'd like to import some namespaces to work with. Imports system.data.sql client to work with the SQL database, and then imports pushSharp. As you can see, it exists in our application .apple, and then imports newtonsoft.json.link to create a JSON payload. Now, in order to loop through the records in the database, we need to write some code. Now, before that, let's go to the page itself and add some labels and text boxes. We choose default.aspx, and right here after the div tag, we'll start writing alt send Apple remote notification, and we put a break, and then a text box, run at equals server, id equals message, and text mode equals multi-line, and we put a width of 300 pixel by 50 pixel. Okay, break the line, and we put a button to click on it, run at equals server, id equals btn send, and the text equals send. And now for the result, we put a label to display the result, run at equals server, id equal result, and the for color equals red. Okay, now we've got the design. Let's go back to the code again. Let's first create the event handler for the button click event. We choose here btn send, and then the click event. Now let's sub send message here, and then send message. Okay, now for the sake of time, I have already created the code to loop through the rows in the table. Let's copy and paste it here. let me explain to you how this code works. First, we've got the count variable, which keeps track of number of devices we send messages to. Then we create an SQL data reader to read the data from the database. Then we create a connection called CNN, and its type is SQL client.SQL connection, and we pass in the connection string we already created in the app config file. And then we declare SQL query. As you can see, it selects all the records from our table APNS devices. Then we open the database, and then we create a command and we pass in our SQL query and connection. And the command type is text, since we don't use any stored procedure. Then we read our data reader, cmd.execute reader, and finally we loop through all the rows in our table to send our messages. Then we close our data reader and connection. Okay, so far so good. As the first step, we should create our pushSharp code just before looping through the table rows. The first thing to do is to read the certificate data file, and for that reason we create a variable called AppleCert. And then we use system.io.file to read the file, and we pass the relative path of the file in our app data folder as the parameter. We use read all bytes method, and then we pass the relative path. Okay. As the second step, I'm going to create the pushSharp APNS configuration, and this method accepts three main arguments. We call it config, as new pushSharp.apple.apns configuration, and here in the first argument you should specify if the certificate has been created for the development environment or the production environment, which is in my case it is meant to be for the production environment. So APNS configuration dot APNS server environment dot production, and as the second parameter we pass the AppleCert we just created, and as the last parameter we should specify the certificate password, which is in my case it is called my password. My password. Make sure you know if your password is case sensitive or not. And just as a hint, I set validate server certificate to false. Set it to false if you have some sort of problem with your certificate or see if it's not working. Set it to false and see if it's working. And as the third step, we create a new APNS service broker which starts and stops the service, and we pass the config file we created as a parameter. So here is create APNS pass the config file, and as the fourth step, we should wire up the necessary events for the APNS broker we just created. The two most important events are on notification succeeded and on notification failed. As the name tells us, on notification succeeded logs or displays messages when the message is sent successfully, and on notification failed event happens when something goes wrong. So add handler APNS broker dot on notification succeeded address of events underline on notification succeeded. We will create those events later. Add handler APNS broker dot on notification failed address of events underline on notification failed. And as an optional but useful event, we can also add feedback service, which provides a check to see if there are any expired device tokens you should no longer use or send notification to. So we use team FPS new feedback service, pass the config file, add handler APNS broker dot on notification, add FPS dot feedback received address of events underline feedback received. Now let's add the events. Just to save some time, I have already created and written the code for these three events. I now copy and paste it here. Let me just open some space. And you can see here we've got our three events. The feedback received event takes the device token and the date time as arguments. In this event, you can update the device token in the database if it has been expired. The notification succeeded event. In this event, we can console.writeLine or debug.writeLine to show a success message to the user. And the third and the most important, I think, the most important event is the events underline on notification failed, which accepts notification and exception as arguments. As you can see, exception as aggregated exception. You can use exception.handle method here to display the error status message and the device token which is causing the problem. You can see if type EX is APNS notification exception, then we direct cast the EX APN notification exception, and we can use this code to log the error status message, status code and notification, and also the device token which is causing the problem. Notification exception dot notification dot device token. Okay, now right after the events, we can go on and use the start method to start the APNS broker like this. APNS broker dot start, and this will start the logging of files and the service. Okay, after starting the service and in the while dr.read, we need a way to queue the messages and send them to each device token we have in our database. For that reason, we use the queue notification property of the APNS broker, and we pass in two required parameters. Let's write the code. APNS broker dot queue notification method, and we pass in a new APNS notification with, and now in between we must pass two required arguments. First, the device token, which will be read by data reader, and the name of column in our database is device token, and the second parameter is payload. Okay, before we write the code for the payload, let's talk about payload. So what is a payload? Each remote notification includes a payload. The payload contains information about how the system should alert the user, as well as any custom data that you might provide. For each notification, compose a JSON dictionary object. This dictionary must contain another dictionary identified by the APS key. The APS dictionary can contain one or more properties that specify the following user notification types: an alert message to display to the user, a number to badge the app icon with, and a sound to play if you want to. And here is an example of payload. On the top we have the APS key, then alert, which contains title and body, and the badge and any other custom data. So let's write the code. We use JObject.parse to parse the JSON. That's why we imported a namespace called newtonsoft.json.link at the top of the page. So Okay, we first pass the APS key. The APS key includes a badge which shows 1 on the device, and it includes a sound file, which in this case I'm using oven.caf, then an alert, and in this case we pass in the message that we want to display to the user, and this message comes from the message text box, if you remember, message.text, and we trim it. Now let's close the JSON. That should work. Okay, and as you can see, we now increment the counter each time we loop through a record, and finally we should stop the APNS broker like this. APNS broker dot stop. Okay, let's run the application and see what happens. I use, as you can see, the debug mode, any CPU, and I use Firefox as my browser. Of course, you can choose other browsers as well. Let's run it. It runs on my local host, and you see the form we already created here, send Apple remote notification. Here is our text box for sending message. I type in "this is a test message" and hit the send button. It seems my password was incorrect, so I run the page again. With the correct password. See if it's working. This is a test message, and hit the send button, and as you can see, notification sent for one device. Here we have it. Now the target user device should receive this notification on its iPhone. I hope you have enjoyed watching this video. Thanks everyone. Bye.